welcome to Jurassic Park Minute, a podcast 65 million years in the making. Jurassic Park Minute is going to be a fan podcast that is going to chronicle and overanalyze the classic 1993 film Jurassic Park. I'm Kyle.
I'm Brady.
And you might know us from another podcast, right?
Yes, Ghostbusters Minute, where we don't have any opening shtick, and it's probably for the better.
We just found out there was a dinosaur called the Brady Canini, right?
That's right, yeah. Going over some, basically trying to find the right pronunciation of some dinosaur names, because we don't want to look like idiots.
Too late for that.
Too late. Yeah. And one of them that I spotted was Brady Canimi.
See, Ankylosaurus it's kind of cool to have a dinosaur with part of your name in it, but it's basically just a big old prehistoric armadillo.
Yeah.
With a giant butt that it swings around and hits people with.
Not very cool.
People. No, but I think they actually show up in Jurassic Park 3 for a hot minute. It's definitely a kind of dinosaur you wouldn't want to mess around with because it's got a shell on the top like a turtle. You couldn't get to it. And it's got this tail that would crack your skull open. But not cool, like a Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting because the movie is called Jurassic Park. And I'm wondering, just how much of what we see in the movie comes from the Jurassic era. And
yeah, that's a good question. I know that velociraptors are from the Cretaceous period. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And T-Rex was not a Jurassic era animal. And someone asked Michael Crichton, why is this on the logo? And he said, because it looks cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what?
Well, I mean, and there's a lot of concessions that are made with this movie to just look cool or sound cool. The idea of mixing different dinosaurs that wouldn't have been around each other by an era that eclipses the entire span of human civilization. Some of these dinosaurs were apart from each other. But it doesn't matter because, you know what? It's a fun movie. It happens because it works. And, this movie, we're going to encounter that a lot. There's a lot of concessions that were made in the making of this film, but you don't recognize any of that because it works so well.
Exactly.
Which is another reason why we chose it to do as our next movie. Brady, so we have a lot of new listeners who are joining us who maybe didn't come over from Ghostbusters Minute. And of course, if you did follow us over from Ghostbusters Minute, we thank you very much for joining us on our next journey, our next Movie by Minute podcast. What is a Movie by Minute podcast? What is this that people are tuning into right now?
Well, Movies by Minutes is not a new thing. It's a podcast show that dates back a few years now, and it started by some fellas named Pete and Alex, who started Star Wars Minute. And they sort of created this format where they will take a movie and analyze 1 minute of it at a time.
Right.
And the shows generally last anywhere between like 10 to 30 minutes. And occasionally special guests will be brought on to talk about the movie that they're discussing, etc. So that's what a Movies by Minute podcast is. Since the Star Wars Minute podcast debuted, we've seen all kinds of other shows coming along that break down movies minute by minute, and we sort of fell into that in 2016 with Ghostbusters, and now we're following it up with Jurassic Park. It's great to see people taking really important movies, really important milestones in cinema history, and breaking them down and analyzing them like this. And it's really neat to see people doing it not just from like a fanboy perspective of,
right.
Oh, isn't it cool when this actor does this thing or whatever.
Greedo's neat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's neat,
yeah.
But there's a lot to unpack, which is what a lot of the guys who do, or fellas and ladies that do Movies by Minute podcasts do, is they unpack everything that's going on in that 1 minute.
That's right.
Who's the actor who's playing Greedo? What is the mask made out of? Was Greedo involved in any expanded universe type stuff?
It's almost like being in a film studies class.
The podcaster is exhibiting a lot of love for what's going on and trying to get across what they love about the movie, but also expose some of the craft that goes into making the film process, right? Yeah. And we're going to be breaking down Jurassic Park minute by minute, and we're going to start today with the first 60 seconds of Jurassic Park. So,
that's right.
But before we get into that, let me ask you this question. Why is it that Jurassic Park was the movie that you wanted to move on to next after we did Ghostbusters instead of doing Ghostbusters 2?
Jurassic Park is... everybody's got a movie that kind of like just hits them in a certain way that they can't quite put into words why or how it does it. And Jurassic Park is that movie for me. I can remember being 8 years old and hearing about this movie coming out, and then it was my life. I mean, it was the thing that I lived for. Every bit of information I could get on this movie was just the highlight of my day. And it's the same case for a lot of people of my generation. Every generation has a big movie event like this that sort of defines that generation, and in some cases defines the individual.
Yeah.
There are some people who are just lifelong devotees to Star Wars. Every single minute of every day is Star Wars. It's on their brain all the time. And so Jurassic Park is kind of that for a lot of people of my generation.
And you felt that with this movie that there was a fair amount of craft going on behind the scenes, a lot of interest. I mean, it's the first movie to really use like large scale CGI as a storytelling tactic, correct?
Yeah,
it was a watershed moment in cinema history.
Definitely. It sort of redefined the medium in a way.
Yeah.
And really brought special effects in particular into a whole new arena. And this is the movie that did it. And it wasn't just a special effects driven story. I mean, this is a character driven story with a lot of spectacle on the side. And it's just coming from such a brilliant place.
Genius of Michael Crichton.
Yeah, it's coming from, that's exactly it. The genius of Michael Crichton. Ideas that are plausible, but still
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the book came out, it was definitely praised as being a realistic science fiction that also combined a lot of action elements. So you could, if you were interested in like DNA strands or chaos theory or something like that, you could pick up this book and find something to chew on there. But if you were just a fan of action type stuff, it has a very compelling narrative that gives you some very exciting and enthralling sequences. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the film carries that over in its own way.
Yeah.
It changes things up in some cases, sometimes for the better, I think.
It gives you some philosophy to chew on and some action to entertain you, which, movies like The Matrix, I would argue, does that well. It's something to think about where at the same time you're entertained by the visual stylings of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, hey, do you want to go ahead and start getting into the first 60 seconds of Jurassic Park?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. At 000, we open on a shot of beams of light coming over the side of the Earth. At 06 seconds, the letters for Universal begin to circle the globe. At 013, the word Universal centers itself in front of the globe. At 020, the Universal fanfare has ended and the logo fades to black. At 025, a second Universal Studios logo has opened up, but this time it is not accompanied by the Universal Studios fanfare. This time we can hear the faint noise of crickets chirping in the background. At 026, the lettering for Universal begins to rotate around the globe that is the Universal logo. At 036, the letters center themselves in front of the globe and the faint noise of crickets can be heard in the background. The night call of jungle birds can be heard as well. At 038, words fade in underneath the logo reading an AMC company. At 40 seconds, the low rumble rises in the background as the screen fades to black. At 45 seconds, from the black screen the words Universal Pictures Presents fade up in the Jurassic Park font. At 48 seconds, John Williams' Jurassic Park score builds in the background. At 53 seconds, the words An Amblin Entertainment Production fade onto the screen. The words fade out. And thus ends the first 60 seconds of Jurassic Park. In this minute, starting off with this episode, I think when we did Ghostbusters Minute, Ghostbusters kind of jumps right into it. You get a little bit of an introduction with the Columbia logo, and we had a lot to unpack actually in that Columbia logo, which I was very surprised of. This one, we get the Universal Studios logo. Not once, but twice.
But twice.
Yeah. So I think we need to preempt this and say that the version of the movie that you and I are watching is the one that we bought on Amazon.com.
That's right.
So Amazon has their Amazon video service that you can buy movies on and watch it on a multiple devices. So you and I bought it on Amazon and have been watching it and kind of broke it down minute by minute. But we didn't start at the very beginning because there's a very long sequence of an FBI logo, saying like, hey, don't steal this movie. It's fine. We're not doing that. We're just talking about the movie. We decided to start at the first frame of the Universal Studios logo, correct?
Yeah.
So that's where, if you're trying to follow along with us, that is where our reading of Jurassic Park is going to start, at that first of the two Universal logos. So I love Universal opening sequences. They've changed it up throughout the years. It's always been really cool. The original one had that like kind of mirror globe. It was like a globe, but it was reflected, and the words Universal Studios were rotating around it.
Yeah. Then you had the little airplane coming around.
Yeah, the little airplane. Yeah.
They changed it multiple times over the years and over the decades. And there's something about whenever a opening logo for a movie studio comes up before your movie, it always gets your blood pumping and everything like that. Right. And every time the Universal logo comes on screen, it just does it a little bit extra for me because they have just been producing these landmark movies since the beginning.
Yeah.
Since the beginning. I've actually got a little bit of history on Universal.
Hit me.
So yeah, Universal Pictures is actually the oldest American movie studio, and it was founded by a German immigrant named Carl Laemmle in 1912. And he kind of wanted to break away from the Edison mold of making movies. And one of the things that he was going to do was to get out of the Edison monopoly of movie making was to start his own movie studio and produce his own films, along with all of the people that he opened the studio with. And one of the ways that he was going to break away from this Edison model was to give his performers billing, which was something that the Edison style of film production wouldn't allow. And in doing that, Carl Laemmle actually created the first movie star, the first Hollywood celebrity, which was a lady named Florence Lawrence. He was also able to produce lavish, big-budget, fun movies, but he wanted the ability to do them and also have them be high grade. Erich von Stroheim was producing a lot of his stuff at Universal, but they were so costly that Carl Laemmle was trying to find a way to produce movies on that scale, but do it a little bit more cost-friendly, but still have that same impact. So another way that he went about doing that was hiring filmmakers and artists to adapt classic stories, and that he knew were going to bring in large crowds. And one of the ways he would bring in those large crowds was cast someone who would bring a great performance, but also have a lot of spectacle. One of the people who did that was Lon Chaney, the man of 1,000 faces. So that tradition of just producing things that are top quality pieces of art, but also just mammoth blockbuster movie-going experiences still continues to this day, and that is reflected in the hiring of sort of an art house, I guess you could call him art house, independent director like Colin Trevorrow, and giving him just a huge franchise like Jurassic Park, which would be Jurassic World. So that's a trend of creating just top quality, entertaining movies.
As far as this logo goes, I like you said earlier, when you see the Universal logo, it kind of gets you excited. I get excited when I see it, no matter which one it is. I know that they produced Inglourious Bastards, and they used the old like 1970s logo for that one, which was just the planet and then the kind of like a dust cloud around it. But this begs a question. If the studio is named Universal Studios, why is their logo the Earth? Don't you think it'd be maybe like the solar system or the Milky Way, or maybe a collection of stars or something? I mean, I get it, the Earth is in space, everything is, but still, I've always wondered that whenever I was like, Universal Studios, okay, well, are we going to see the rest of the universe? Or is it the space behind the Earth? I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know. So the first of the two logos we're seeing here is the one that was debuted for Jurassic Park: The Lost World, and it uses a Jerry Goldsmith take on the Universal Studios opening like song. I don't know if there's an actual like term for that, but their theme song, I guess that is the term, the theme song.
Yes.
The Universal score, if you will, which has been remade by like John Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, James Horner. They've all done variations on it. Now, the second logo that we see here was the one that was introduced in 1990 as part of Universal Studios' 75th anniversary, and it usually includes the Jerry Goldsmith score, except for this version of it uses a John Williams version of the score. So then, of course, we have John Williams' score start to pick up in the background with just some flutes. It's very quiet. We get that boom that we use. It's very ominous.
Yeah,
and it starts setting the mystery of what's going on.
That's right. And I think that's what this film has that the sequels do not have, and that is that sense of mystery and awe. And I think a lot of that is encapsulated here in that opening when you first get that boom, and the music starts. And the sequels, there's really no way that you could kind of reintroduce these things for the first time.
Yeah. It's a bell that has been rung and cannot be unrung in a lot of ways. I mean, it's, unless you're using the mystery element. The CG thing, we've seen it. It's been in every movie since Jurassic Park, to varying degrees of quality. And I think it's, CG is just amazing what they can do with it these days. But that first time we saw it in Jurassic Park, and we'll get into this when in a few minutes later when we see the, Brachiosaurus for the first time. But you're right, it is difficult to recapture that feeling that you had the first time you saw this movie. But,
right.
So Amblin Entertainment got a hold of the production for this movie. It looked like Steven Spielberg had been thinking about doing this movie for a while. Michael Crichton actually originally wrote this as a screenplay, not as a book. So his idea was, just like he did with Westworld and The Great Train Robbery and Runaway, he was going to come out and shop this around Hollywood. But Amblin Entertainment is a very interesting group, because they've worked with several different production houses. They were production facilities. They've used Universal, they've used DreamWorks, they've used Disney very recently with the BFG this year. But Amblin Entertainment was formed in 1981 by Steven Spielberg, Frank Marshall, and Kathleen Kennedy. Amblin was formed as a production company for Steven Spielberg as well as some of his director's friends. Amblin Productions include, under Joe Dante, Gremlins, Small Soldiers, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, Inner Space, under Robert Zemeckis, the Back to the Future trilogy, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, under Brian Levant, The Flintstones duology, Matthew Roberts, Batteries Not Included. Barry Levinson did Young Sherlock Holmes with them. Penelope Spheres did the 1994 film remake of The Little Rascals, which, it's funny because she went on to do, she did Society, the punk movie first, and then she goes on to do The Little Rascals. She's had a very colorful career. Brad Sibberling did Casper. Don Bluth did An American Tale, The Land Before Time, American Tale, Five Will Goes West. Clint Eastwood did The Bridges of Madison County, Flags of Our Fathers, Letters from Iwo Jima, Hereafter. Gil Keenan did Monster House, which is an amazing movie that not a lot of people have seen. Martin Campbell did The Mask of Zorro, Legend of Zorro. Richard Donner did The Goonies, of course. Wanda Bont, Twister. Barry Sonnenfeld did The Men in Black trilogy. And Joe Johnston did Jurassic Park 3. J.J. Abrams did Super 8. That was pretty recent. And the Coen brothers did True Grit.
Yes, Amblin defines the childhood of so many people, especially of our generation. I mean, growing up on movies like The Gremlins and
Goonies,
yeah. E.T., things like that. And you've seen that Amblin style kind of carried over recently into Stranger Things on Netflix. So it's
it's a style and a feeling now more than anything else. But Amblin has also done some TV stuff. They did Tiny Toon Adventures, Sequest, DSV, Animaniacs, Earth 2, Pinky and the Brain, ER, Freakazoid. They did ER. Wow, it's crazy. Back to the Future when it was a cartoon. Family Dog. The Spooktacular Adventures of Casper, Fievel's American Tales. And, there's so much stuff here to discuss. It would be like an hour if we were just here listing off all the Amblin productions.
It would. Now, you mentioned ER. You do know the Jurassic Park ER connection, correct?
Michael Crichton came up with ER.
All right, here's the thing. So Michael Crichton had come up with a story about a clone dinosaur, pterodactyl, in a theme park, and a little boy. And that scenario was going to just sort of play like the pterodactyl got out on the loose, and the little kid was going to be involved somehow. Anyway, it was a very rough idea. But he was also teaming up with Steven Spielberg to produce a hospital drama movie called ER. So when they're talking about this, Spielberg says, this idea you have about a clone dinosaur in a theme park, why don't we try and, I don't know, go with that. Let's see if we can go with that maybe and do this ER thing as like a TV show. And we'll get around to that in a little while. And that was sort of the germination of the movie Jurassic Park. And so whenever they started kind of getting that up and running, and he refined the story a little bit more, built upon it, and then created the book Jurassic Park, he started shopping around the idea to different studios. But he always had Spielberg in mind as director.
But at some point, weren't different production unit or different they were trying to get different directors on Jurassic Park, right?
That's right. Yeah. Whenever I say shopping it around, I mean studios were just pouncing on it, and everybody wanted to get this thing because they knew this was just going to be huge. Each studio had their own director that they wanted to attach to it. Tim Burton was one of them. James Cameron also showed a lot of interest. Richard Donner and Joe Dante. Now I've heard James Cameron talk about his approach was going to be very, very, very different from the book. And he was basically just going to be remaking Aliens, but he was going to be putting dinosaurs in place of the aliens. And he was going to cast Arnold Schwarzenegger as Alan Grant, Bill Paxton as Ian Malcolm, and Charlton Heston as John Hammond. And he has since said that...
so they went on to do True Lies together, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And he's recently said in an interview that he thinks the best adaptation of that book was the movie that we got. Yeah. And he thinks that Steven Spielberg was the only person who really could have done it.
Tim Burton's version would have been interesting.
Very interesting.
By interesting, meaning I'm glad we got the one we got, but I would like to see what his imagining of that world would have been like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Richard Donner, the guy who created the Goonies, I think that could have been really interesting.
All right, well, that's pretty much all I've got for the first 60 seconds of Jurassic Park. Now, again, we were talking a lot about Universal Studios, Amblin Entertainment, the logos we saw today. Really nothing going on screen.
Yeah, not a lot.
Expect a little bit more tomorrow in the forthcoming episodes of Jurassic Park Minute. Universal Studios, love their opening sequences, their opening logo sequences. They do take a little long. A little while to get over with. So, all right, folks, so that is our first 60 seconds of Jurassic Park Minute. Make sure you join us back again tomorrow. We're going to be overanalyzing the first minute of Jurassic Park. actually, I think, picking up with the words Jurassic Park on screen.
I think so, yeah.
All right, Brady, you ready to get out of here?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our podcast. Be back here tomorrow, and until then, hold on to your butts.
Jurassic Park Minute is a fan-supported podcast. If you like the podcast, then leave us a review on iTunes. You can contact us at JurassicParkMinute@gmail.com and visit us online at JurassicParkMinute.com, Facebook.com/Jurassic Park Minute, and Twitter.com/Jurassic Minute.